The thing is, the show is taking 3 months of renovation or whatever it might be for that episode and crams it down into 45 minutes. So how can you work with them? They're nuts. These homeowners are nuts. But it's the highs and lows.
At 47, Drew Scott has finally opened up about something fans have wondered about for years. From sudden disappearances on the show to quiet changes behind the camera, rumors have circulated about burnout, family tensions, and even a possible exit from television. But the truth is deeper, more personal, and far more human than anyone expected. Join us as we uncover what really happened, why he stepped back, and how it changed everything. Roots of determination. In 1978, in the bustling city of Vancouver, Canada, Drew and Jonathan Scott came into the world as identical twins. From the start, their lives were closely intertwined. They weren't just brothers. They were natural partners in curiosity and creativity. Growing up, they did almost everything together, from playing in the yard to dreaming about what they wanted to become. Their parents noticed early on that both boys shared not only the same face, but also the same spark for adventure and imagination. The Scott home was a place filled with encouragement. It wasn't fancy or showy, but it was rich in love and energy. The twins often spent time exploring, inventing little games, and trying out new ideas. This environment helped them grow into confident, driven kids who weren't afraid to work hard or take chances. Even as young boys, Drew and Jonathan seemed to know that their futures would be built by their own hands. Their father, Jim Scott, played a huge role in shaping who they became. Before settling down, Jim worked in the Hollywood film industry as an actor and stuntman. He had lived an exciting life surrounded by cameras and sets, but he eventually chose to leave that world behind for something quieter, a ranch life focused on family. From his stories, Drew and Jonathan learned that success could take many forms. They understood that reinvention was possible at any stage in life. Jim's decision to trade fame for family showed the twins that discipline and hard work mattered more than glamour. He often taught them practical lessons about determination, responsibility, and keeping your word. There was no easy path to success in the Scott household. You earned what you wanted. Their mother, Joanne, brought balance to that mindset. She valued education and order. While Jim encouraged big dreams, Joanne made sure those dreams were supported by focus and structure. She was the one who taught her sons the importance of reading, planning, and doing things properly. She encouraged curiosity, but also made sure her children respected rules and routines. Together, their parents created a home where creativity and discipline went hand in hand, a combination that would later define the brothers' entire careers. By the time Drew and Jonathan turned 8, their determination was already taking shape. Most kids their age were busy playing, but the twins were busy creating. They came up with an idea to make nylon-wrapped hangers, simple but useful. Instead of just making them for fun, they decided to sell them. Going door to door in their neighborhood, the young brothers introduced themselves confidently to adults and offered their handmade hangers for sale. It wasn't easy. Some people turned them away, but the twins didn't stop. Their persistence paid off when one woman placed a large order. That small victory felt huge to them. It was proof that their work had value. From that moment, they understood a lesson that would stay with them for life. Success isn't handed to you. You have to earn it. The experience taught them not only how to make money, but also how to talk to people, handle rejection, and stay optimistic. It was the start of their lifelong pattern: see a need, create a solution, and make it happen. And little did they know, those early hangers were just the first step toward building something much bigger. Because next came the stage lights, cameras, and a dream that would take both brothers far beyond Vancouver. Unusual childhood hustles. As kids, Drew and Jonathan didn't just sit around after school. They looked for ways to work, learn, and have fun at the same time. One of their earliest side jobs was entertaining at children's parties. They trained as clowns, learned simple tricks, practiced balloon art, and built short routines that would keep a room of excited kids smiling. Performing for children is not easy. Kids are honest and unpredictable. If they don't like something, you know it right away. These parties became an early classroom for showmanship. The brothers learned to read the room, adjust their timing, and keep the energy up. They discovered how to grab attention, hold it, and then switch gears when something wasn't working. They learned to work as a team, one talking while the other set up a bit, one leading while the other supported. Over time, their humor became sharper and more natural. Their confidence grew with every show. These small gigs gave them real practice in being on stage, thinking fast and staying calm when things got messy. All of that would later help them on television. But back then, it was simply about doing a good job and making people happy. For Drew, sports once looked like the path forward. He was tall, athletic, and competitive, and basketball felt like a clear goal. He trained, worked hard, and imagined a future built around the game. Then, injuries changed everything. What had seemed possible suddenly wasn't. Losing that path was painful and confusing. It forced him to face a big question early in life: if not this, then what? The setback wasn't just physical, it was emotional. Drew had to let go of a plan he thought was right for him. But the hard moment also opened a new door. Without the pressure of sports, he began looking more closely at other interests he had always enjoyed, including performing and being on camera. The disappointment didn't disappear overnight, but it pushed him to think bigger about how many different ways there are to build a life, especially if you're willing to learn new things. With sports off the table, Drew leaned into entertainment. He started going to auditions, taking classes, and saying yes to small roles that would build experience. He worked as a body double for Tom Welling on Smallville and appeared in shows like Breaker High and Madison. These were not big starring roles, but they were important steps. He showed up, learned the process, and proved he could handle the long hours and the pressure that comes with professional sets. On set, he paid attention to everything. He watched how directors spoke to actors, how camera crews moved, and how a scene came together piece by piece. He learned why timing matters, when to deliver a line, when to react, and when to step back. He saw how many people it takes to make even a short scene work. This changed how he viewed success. It wasn't just about being in front of the camera, it was about understanding the full process and being a strong part of a team. Those early jobs helped Drew redefine his goals. He still loved performing, but he also cared about building steady skills and a reliable career. Step by step, he was shaping a path that combined creativity with discipline, something that would later become his trademark. Stick around, because next comes the moment when small roles and party tricks lead to a much bigger stage: the real estate gamble. During their time at the University of Calgary, Drew and Jonathan took a chance that would change their lives. Near campus, they found a worn-down house that many people ignored. Instead of seeing a problem, they saw a project. They pooled what money they had, took on the risk, and bought it. The plan was simple: fix it up and rent it to students. They did the work themselves wherever they could, cleaning, painting, repairing, and learning how to stretch a small budget. They paid attention to what renters actually needed: safe rooms, working appliances, and a clean, comfortable space. When they finished, the house looked better and functioned well, and they were able to rent it out quickly. The rent covered the costs and gave them profit. That first flip taught them a clear lesson: careful planning, smart upgrades, and hands-on effort can turn a struggling property into a dependable source of income. It also gave them confidence. They weren't guessing anymore. They had proof that their approach worked. As they took on more projects, the brothers discovered how well their skills fit together. Jonathan had a natural talent for design and construction. He could spot structural issues, imagine better layouts, and understand what materials made sense for the budget. He liked solving problems on site and making spaces work for real people. Drew's strengths were different but just as important. He was focused on deals, numbers, and negotiations. He could talk through pricing, read the market, and handle contracts. He made sure they didn't overpay when buying and that they didn't cut corners when selling or renting. This balance, Jonathan building value and Drew protecting value, helped them make smarter choices and avoid expensive mistakes. Working with outside agents, however, was often frustrating. Some realtors were slow to respond, didn't understand investment goals, or pushed deals that didn't fit. Drew wanted more control over the process. He studied for the exams, earned his real estate license, and began handling their transactions directly. This cuts out delays and guesswork. It also gave them better access to listings, faster decisions, and more leverage when negotiating. With Jonathan running renovations and Drew running the business side, they became a fast-moving, reliable team. With a few successful flips behind them, the brothers turned their efforts into a formal business, the Scott Real Estate Company. It wasn't loud or flashy. It was steady and focused. They looked for properties with real potential, did careful estimates, and stuck to tight timelines. They built a trusted network of electricians, plumbers, and suppliers who could deliver quality work on schedule. Word spread that they finished what they started and that their rentals were clean, safe, and fairly priced. At the same time, Drew didn't let go of his dream to work in entertainment. He kept auditioning, learning, and showing up on sets when he could. Real estate gave him stability. It let him pay bills, avoid debt, and keep moving toward the camera without fear of losing his footing. That combination, solid income from property and steady effort in entertainment, became their foundation. The company grew, their skills sharpened, and their goals stayed clear. Build something real today while reaching for bigger opportunities tomorrow. Split paths, same vision. In 2006, Drew made a hard choice. He left Calgary and moved to Vancouver to chase acting full-time. He wanted to test himself in a bigger market with more auditions and more chances to grow. He took classes, met casting agents, and built a small network. He also took any honest work that kept him close to the industry. For a while, the plan felt strong. But acting can be uneven. Auditions came and went. Roles were small or delayed. Payments were late or lower than expected. Slowly, the costs added up. Rent, food, training, transportation, headshots, and the basic price of living near the heart of a film scene. Drew began to slip into debt. The pressure built daily. It was more than numbers on a sheet. It was the fear of losing time and the weight of not wanting to disappoint family, friends, or himself. Dreams that once felt bright now felt heavy. He had wanted to prove he could stand on his own in entertainment. Instead, he was watching his savings disappear. Still, he kept showing up. He learned to cut expenses, to keep a routine, and to stay ready for the next call. Then the bottom came. The debt was too much. Auditions weren't enough. The stress was constant and private. Drew didn't want to complain or ask for help, so he kept quiet and focused on solutions. He returned to the skill that had always worked, real estate. He began rebuilding from scratch in Vancouver, finding properties, running numbers, and using the proven step-by-step approach that he and Jonathan had refined. Even before the worst of the debt, the brothers had started testing another path. Between 2002 and 2008, Drew, Jonathan, and their older brother JD formed Davidian Productions. It was a small, independent effort that let them produce their own content, short films, television ideas, and early projects that sharpened skills behind and in front of the camera. This wasn't a hobby. It was structured work, writing outlines, budgeting, scheduling shoots, and handling post-production. The split paths, acting, real estate, and production, weren't a sign of confusion. They were the training ground for something larger that was already on the horizon. Pitching television stardom. By the late 2000s, television networks were searching for new ideas to attract audiences who were becoming more interested in reality-based programming. Drew Scott, who had been balancing his work in real estate with his ongoing passion for entertainment, saw an opening. Along with producers at Cineflix, he became involved in developing an early concept called Realtor Idol. The idea was modeled loosely on talent competition shows that were popular at the time, such as American Idol. The goal was to have real estate agents compete in different challenges to prove their skills and win recognition. At first, it seemed like a fun and creative way to highlight the energy and competitiveness of the real estate world. However, during early discussions and pilot testing, it became clear that audiences were not responding well. The format felt forced and lacked emotional connection. Viewers didn't want to see agents competing for glory. They wanted to see real people finding homes and improving their lives. The show was dropped before it ever aired. For many people, that might have been the end of the idea, but for Drew, it became motivation to rethink everything. He believed there was still potential in bringing real estate to television, just in a more relatable way. When the producers decided to redesign the show, they began developing a new version called My Dream Home. This time, the focus would be on helping families search for and transform houses rather than turning realtors into competitors. Initially, Cineflix planned to pair Drew with a female co-host, someone who could handle the design side while Drew focused on buying and negotiation. Drew, however, had a different vision. He knew that no one could bring better chemistry, humor, and trust to the screen than his twin brother, Jonathan. They had been working side by side in business for years, and their dynamic was genuine. Drew insisted that if producers wanted the show to feel real, Jonathan needed to be part of it. The production team agreed to test the idea, and as soon as cameras started rolling, the difference was clear. That decision changed everything. What started as a small adjustment turned into the foundation for one of television's most recognizable duos. By 2011, HGTV officially greenlit the series under a new name, Property Brothers. The format was straightforward. Drew helped clients find and buy homes that matched their budgets, and Jonathan transformed them into dream spaces through creative renovations. The show quickly connected with audiences across Canada and the United States. Viewers loved the emotional stories, the realistic challenges, and the satisfaction of seeing something old become beautiful again. But as their fame grew and their schedules exploded, the fast climb to success would soon bring pressures that neither of them saw coming. Cracks behind the camera. At the height of Property Brothers' success, viewers began noticing something unusual. Drew Scott, who was always present beside Jonathan, started appearing less frequently in certain episodes and segments. In some scenes, Jonathan carried the conversation alone. In others, Drew seemed quieter, less energetic, or missing entirely. Loyal fans quickly took note. Online discussions began, filled with questions and speculation. Was there conflict between the brothers? Had Drew stepped away to pursue a new project? Some even wondered if there had been a personal disagreement or a decision to move in separate directions. But there were no official explanations. The show continued airing and production moved forward without public acknowledgement of any issue. Yet something clearly wasn't the same. The absence went beyond scheduling. It felt like a shift, and viewers sensed it. Behind the scenes, those closest to Drew knew something serious was happening. He wasn't withdrawing by choice. He was struggling, physically and silently. But in the entertainment world, where timelines are strict and appearances count, he chose not to reveal what he was truly facing. While fans were making guesses, Drew was dealing with symptoms that had no obvious cause. He experienced relentless exhaustion, the kind that sleep wouldn't fix. It wasn't simple tiredness. It was a deep fatigue that made standing, walking, or focusing feel nearly impossible. Alongside that, he suffered from severe digestive problems. His stomach reacted unpredictably, often leaving him in pain during long filming days. Eating became risky, and the simplest meals sometimes led to hours of discomfort. On top of this, he developed an intense sensitivity to heat. Under studio lights or during construction shoots, his body would overreact. What used to be natural, walking through a renovation site, lifting materials, or meeting homeowners, suddenly became physically overwhelming. These symptoms came without warning and without explanation. One day he could push through. The next he could barely move. There was no answer, only fear. He worried that something serious was happening internally, something that could end his ability to work, or worse. But he continued filming when he could, masking the pain behind smiles and professional focus. He didn't want to alarm fans or burden his team. Publicly, nothing was said. Privately, everything was changing. After months of uncertainty and a long list of medical tests, Drew finally received a diagnosis that explained everything. Mercury poisoning combined with chronic fatigue syndrome. The level of toxicity in his system was high enough to disrupt major bodily functions. It affected digestion, neurological balance, energy regulation, and stress tolerance. The condition wasn't just uncomfortable, it was dangerous if ignored. Doctors were initially baffled. Mercury poisoning is rare and often missed. It took time, repeated testing, and persistence to identify it. Even once confirmed, treatment wasn't simple. Detox processes, dietary restrictions, and constant medical monitoring were required. There was no quick cure. Recovery would be slow and uncertain. Throughout this discovery, Drew chose to keep the situation private. He didn't want headlines or concern. He didn't want pity. He wanted answers and solutions. While the world saw a successful TV figure, off-screen he was fighting to stabilize his health and protect his future. His absence had nothing to do with fame or conflict. It was a quiet fight for survival. And while he stepped away to heal, another life-changing shift was already waiting, far beyond the spotlight. Life on pause. When the diagnosis became clear, Drew had to do something he rarely did: stop. He stepped away from filming schedules and slowed his workload. This shift wasn't just a scheduling change, it was a major emotional moment for both brothers. Jonathan continued to carry the shows, leading walkthroughs, managing crews, and keeping production on time. He showed up with the same energy viewers expected, but behind that energy was worry for his twin and a heavier burden at work. The brothers spoke often, compared notes, and adjusted plans to protect Drew's health. They made decisions that kept cameras rolling without pushing Drew beyond his limits. Sometimes that meant rewriting a scene. Sometimes it meant removing a segment entirely. For a pair known for their teamwork, the separation was hard. Drew felt frustration at missing milestones and moments with families on set. Jonathan felt the pressure of keeping the brand steady while supporting his brother. They had shared wins for years. Now they shared a quiet, difficult season where progress meant giving Drew time to heal. Treatment started with careful detox protocols to lower mercury levels. Doctors built a plan with targeted therapies, supplements, and close monitoring. Diet changes were strict. Hydration, sleep quality, and stress control became daily goals. Drew followed a structured routine: rest windows, gentle movement only when safe, and regular check-ins with medical staff. The goal was to rebuild his body slowly and avoid setbacks. This process can feel lonely. When your body is fragile, you cancel plans. You stay home when others go out. Long filming days are replaced by long quiet hours. Drew faced that isolation honestly. He worked on his mental health along with his physical recovery. He talked to professionals, leaned on family, and set small, practical goals. He tracked improvements even when they were small. More stable energy in the morning, fewer reactions to heat, and a better meal that didn't lead to pain. There were hard days when symptoms spiked and hope felt thin, but the plan stayed steady. Every choice centered on healing. The brothers and their close team respected this boundary. Work could wait, health could not. That mindset lowered stress and kept Drew focused on one job: getting well enough to live and work at a sustainable pace. For months, fans guessed. They noticed absences and softer schedules. Finally, Drew decided to speak directly. He shared honest posts online about his condition, the confusion before the diagnosis, and the slow path forward. He didn't dramatize it. He described what the symptoms felt like and what he was doing to recover. He talked about fear of not getting better, fear of letting people down, and fear of losing the work he loved. What stood out was his openness about mental health and identity. He talked about strength not as pushing through pain, but choosing rest when your body demands it. He talked about support, marriage, and family as anchors. He also spoke about masculinity in clear terms, about how being a man does not mean hiding illness or rejecting help. It means telling the truth about what you can and cannot do, and respecting your limits so you can be there for the people who count on you. Fans responded with care and gratitude. Many shared their own health struggles and felt seen. The conversation became larger than a TV show. It became a shared reminder that health comes first, and that vulnerability is not a weakness, it is a skill. Love during chaos. In 2010, during a busy period of work and travel, Drew Scott met Linda Fan in a casual setting, a bar event in Los Angeles. It wasn't a planned introduction or a media moment. They simply started talking. The conversation flowed easily, and Drew was drawn to Linda's calm presence and thoughtful way of speaking. Unlike the world he often moved in, full of cameras and deadlines, Linda brought a quiet confidence. They shared interests in creativity, travel, and personal growth. There was no rush to impress. It was clear early on that this was a meaningful connection. They exchanged numbers, continued talking, and slowly built something deeper than either expected. While Drew was facing the demands of rising fame and long filming schedules, Linda became a steady point in his life, someone who cared more about the man than the image. Their relationship grew behind the scenes, away from the spotlight. There were no headlines, no big announcements, just two people choosing each other through the ups and downs of real life. Over the next 8 years, their bond strengthened through quiet commitment. Linda supported Drew during filming seasons, business expansion, and eventually health challenges. She was not only a partner in love, but also someone with a strong sense of purpose herself. With a background in creative direction and business, she understood focus and discipline, which made their support for one another mutual and equal. They took their time before stepping into marriage. They believed in building a foundation, not rushing to a public ceremony. Their relationship remained mostly private until they announced their wedding plans. In 2018, they married in Italy in a heartfelt ceremony surrounded by close family and friends. The event was featured in the special Drew and Linda Say I Do, offering fans a rare look at their personal lives. Viewers saw a version of Drew not often visible on television, warm, emotional, and deeply connected to the person beside him. This wedding marked more than a celebration. It marked the beginning of a new balance. Drew was no longer just a public figure or a busy entrepreneur. He was a husband with a home life built on mutual respect and quiet loyalty. In May 2022, Drew and Linda welcomed their first child, a son named Parker James Scott. Becoming a father changed Drew in powerful ways. Parenthood brought a different kind of responsibility, one that no schedule, business plan, or production timeline could overshadow. He began speaking publicly about the importance of being present rather than simply being busy. This new chapter shaped how he approached work. Projects were no longer about growth alone. They had to fit a life where family came first. He became more selective about filming schedules, more protective of downtime, and more determined to build a future with room for his child's milestones. Drew often shared small glimpses of family life, laughing with Linda, holding Parker, enjoying simple mornings at home. These moments weren't staged. They were real and deeply valued. Fatherhood also brought clarity to his recovery journey. Health was no longer just about surviving work. It was about living long and well enough to watch his son grow. It grounded him in a new purpose beyond fame or success. Want more stories like this? Hit subscribe, drop a comment with your thoughts, and don't forget to like the video.